Thank you, thank you. If you can hear me, just raise your hand. I want to make sure everyone in the room is good. Okay, fantastic. Bonjour, comment est Tout en forme? Bon, bon, bon. So, I want to give you...
Can we just go up? Are we just going up?
I want to give you a heads up on a little surprise for this panel. Christine, I will apologize to you later. I hope you find it of value. Now, the purpose of this panel was to talk about the risk of investing in new businesses in emerging and developed markets. Over the lunchtime break, I had a conversation that was hugely informative about not only the investor side, but also the investee side on the ecosystem in Haiti. And because it was so illustrative and informative, I actually wanted to invite up 3 additional panelists that were in the conversation this afternoon. So in addition to our panelists of Eric, Dan, and Dawn, I'd like to invite up as well Sandra, Najila, and Merlene. Would you please come to the stage? Now, the seating will be a little bit tight, so I think we're going to have to share a couple of chairs, but we should be good. And I'm going to go ahead and take a seat so we can be on time and manage the clock efficiently. 20 minutes? We will keep it efficient then. All right, Dan, if it's okay with you, I'm going to share the chair. And if we need to bring up another chair, I'm happy to do so.
I can share too.
Oh, great. So we're going to start off a little bit macro, and then we're going to get to the micro, because that was part of the conversation. And on the macro, I want to bring in a lesson from what we've seen in other ecosystems. We talked earlier about how Africa has had a growing startup ecosystem in the last decade. And I wanted to first ask, Eric, you've been investing in over 32 countries, I believe, in Africa. What were the beginning signals and points that you saw in Africa's ecosystem that said these are the things that are being put in place to help us grow an ecosystem, whether it was the community, the culture, or the infrastructure?
Well, thanks for inviting me, and also I want to thank the organizers for getting me over. In Africa, I think about 22 decades ago, everyone in the world was expecting Africa to industrialize, but we went into the information and Africa leapfrogged into mobile. And so the first antithesis of what we see today is a mobile culture that is very exponential and pervasive. Today, there are more than 1 billion mobile users in Africa. So mobile is the platform for disruption. The second signal was around the growth of broadband. That we saw a lot of submarine cables. I was involved in building some of those cables coming into play and brought broadband to the mobile devices. And so what we saw in Africa was that most people were seeing broadband for the first time on the phone. We're seeing Google and Facebook on your phone. And then suddenly, the youthful population that I call the second generation of entrepreneurs started realizing that they could build the next Facebook, they could build the next Twitter, they could build the next Google. And that was quite powerful because when I was growing up in college, generally you finish school, your parents expect you to get a job or leave the country. Suddenly, you have a paradigm shift where the generation of entrepreneurs are beginning to realize that we can actually create our own destiny. We can actually create companies, right? So that's quite powerful in itself. And that is, I think, one of the biggest catalysts. The fourth factor is that for every innovation ecosystem to thrive, you need the actors of the private sector, government, civil society, academia, and research to be interacting. And this has been growing within the countries that I call the kings. So there are 5 countries that I believe are leading the digital economy in Africa, which is Kenya, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, Ghana, and South Africa. In this market, you see a very strong correlation and activity between these actors. And so to end, I'll just give you an example of my first investment. I kind of stumbled into investing, actually. The first one was in 2005. I backed 2 guys who were out of college and were buddies of mine. They started a company. Well, they tricked me, actually. They asked me to be an advisor. They didn't ask me for money first. And then later on, they conned me into putting money into the company. And then in 2007, I backed another guy whom I knew. And luckily, the first company went cash flow positive. The second year went profitable in the third year, and it started growing exponentially. And that, for me, was a very strong signal that 2 guys out of college who actually start a business with no training skills and actually build an outlier.
So I'm getting this sense of leverage and how we can leverage the resources that we have in front of us. Looking at the side of Haiti, what should investors know about Haiti that they can leverage to support entrepreneurs that they may invest in? Out of curiosity, raise your hand if you're an investor in the crowd. Raise your hand if you're an entrepreneur. Okay. So what should investors know?
So, in terms of investing in Haiti, what investors should know is that Haitians are hard-working people. And Haitians are entrepreneurs at heart. And Haitians are going to make it happen. So I'm coming from perspective. So in Haiti, you have to understand there is an upper class and there is a very low class. So for myself, I'm from a background of my grandfather was a subsistence farmer. He came to the US on a boat. So for me, why I wanted to be here was to make sure that people understand that when thinking about investing in Haiti, don't forget those people that are working hard every single day just to put food on the table. Don't only think about those large corporations and that's gonna help the top 5%. Think about those farmers, think about the fishermen, fisherwomen. Think about all of them and know that Haitians are hardworking, and don't forget about that group of people.
So I'd like to add one other thought, and that is there have been many initiatives globally for emerging markets. But what has often happened is that we end up creating a divide between the rich and the poor, that it becomes even more pronounced. I believe that the transformation of the human spirit and of the human heart has to be part of this dialogue, especially in Haiti, where there has been so much wounding, so much trauma, and so much sadness and loss. And when we ignore those things in a population of people, we end up with a nation that has a broken heart and a broken spirit. And no amount of technology and money thrown at that is going to solve the ultimate problem. So I feel like we need to add to this discussion the whole issue of transformation, healing the spirit of the Haitians, and helping them to realize their identity, as we learned earlier, the blood of a slave, but the heart and mind of a king and a leader.
Awesome. So I come in an investor, and I see governmental institutions, I see different communities. What can I do as an investor to help move the government towards support, to help make sure that the infrastructure and the resources here are support? How do I make that connection to help out?
Hi, I would say that, so for example, in New Jersey, there's an initiative where real estate developers are able to come to New Jersey and build, these multi-million-dollar condos if they promise a certain amount of jobs to, people living in New Jersey. So what I would say with investors coming into Haiti is that you have to set up a budget and investment into the people before your product. So I would say if you're coming in, you're saying, okay, we have $5 million for this new technology, but we also have $1 million to change the roads, to make sure that we take care of our employees. And I think once the government sees that, the government will follow lead.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, go ahead.
Sorry, no, I was just going to add to that too. I think one of the things for investors coming in is to actually realize that the human resource, that individuals who are underrepresented, whether it's them as an individual or the country as a whole, they're uniquely qualified to actually solve the problems that they experience. So without their perspective, added to the dialogue around the solution, you're not going to have that sustainable change. And so it's something where you have the partnerships you all are talking about. And I think something that the country can do internally as well for any investors or entrepreneurs within Haiti. Yeah.
Awesome. So this understanding of people and making sure that sort of how Google makes sure they provide for an environment that holistically supports the employees, having investors help create an environment that holistically supports entrepreneurs in whatever way they can. I want to be conscious of the timing as well. To jump onto the entrepreneur side and making sure they're set up as much as possible for investment, what questions should entrepreneurs be asking themselves? What other ways of thinking should they be considering as they're looking to finance a startup and position it to scale in Haiti or elsewhere?
I think from my perspective, I think that you have to realize that money is just a commodity. A dollar for me is the same as a dollar from anyone else. So what you're really looking for is not what the money is, but who's behind the money and what other things can they bring to the table for you. An example of something that we've done that was thinking a little bit differently was we raised funds one time from our largest prospective customer, which happened to be a publicly traded company in the US. And what's great is that capital is very patient, and they helped us develop our products and services better than anyone else would, because they really cared about the product and service and not just the return on cash. So I think sometimes if you open up your eyes and look, you'll realize that there's people who bring a lot more to the table than just the cash, and I think that's where the needle really moves.
Anyway, I would just add one more thing to that. One of the things that entrepreneurs don't realize is that the same way your business can fail because you didn't raise money, you can also fail because you raise money, right? So money is not really the factor. It's how you get money and who you get the money from. So it's important for you to figure it out. The same way investors decide which entrepreneurs they want to back, you, the entrepreneur, must also decide which investors' money you want to take. You need to do the same due diligence that the investors do on you. You have to do the same on them. One of my companies recently, we turned down an investment, a follow-on investment from a prospective investor. And the reason we did is that when we did a lot of due diligence on this very big UK fund, we realized that, look, we are not aligned. Though they gave us very good terms, we realized that we look at their track record of past investments and where they took the company. That's not where we're taking our company. So we had to say no, right? So sometimes it's better for you to say no because you will eventually get the right investor. And so that's very, very important. In addition to that, a lot of entrepreneurs miss a very important point. Look, the reason I have a job is because you're an entrepreneur. If you don't have a job, if you're not an entrepreneur, I don't have a job, right? So really, the entrepreneurs have the leverage. But entrepreneurs lose the leverage because you wait too long to raise money. You wait to the last minute, then the investor has a leverage over you. But normally, the real antithesis of this game is that you, the entrepreneur, you have the deal flow, and you actually have the upper hand.
Now, I'll push back on that a little bit, though. Domestically, for example, in the United States, they often say, wait as long as you can for investment, hold off until you really need it to make sure you're best set up for success and exit. Now, that might be a complete difference in context, but is there a middle ground when you should hold off and when you should go forward?
I actually dealt with this exactly, and I think the difference to Eric's point is you don't want to wait until you desperately need the cash because then you're under the gun and you don't have the leverage. But to your point, you want to build as much value as possible before you go ahead and raise the funds so that you suffer less dilution. So it's a middle ground to get in between those two.
Yeah, and I think just with that as well is like you need to look at who your clients are initially. So my first company, basically, we were going in and had turned down outside capital because the initial members, they were our first investors. So it was a community about women willing to invest in each other. So it was really them actually literally investing in one another and like raising like that way. So they kind of like became like our voice internally. So I think that that's something that's important with any companies looking to start in emerging markets. It's just like, you know, patience and taking time to kind of raise them on your own.
Now, it's one thing to say, I have people coming to me for investment. I have a business partner that I might get interest from because I'm providing them value. If you're in a community where you might not have as much fluid access to people, access to communication, how do you get the attention? How do you go about finding that solution such that you can expose yourself to opportunity and find out the best one for yourself?
So let's take Haiti as a context. So normally in emerging markets, the challenge is that there's not a lot of supply of capital. Right. Now, the way you differentiate yourself as an entrepreneur, you got to have skin in the game. A lot of entrepreneurs write to me and say, hey, Eric, you know, I have this great idea, but I will need you to give me money to start the idea. Right there, I hit delete. Because you don't want to put skin in the game. You don't believe in your idea enough to put your little resource in it, and you want me to put my money into it. Right? So a lot of entrepreneurs miss that point. Even if it is just about if your idea is pretty stable, if you can find a loan to even create half of it, immediately you show the investor that you've done something, you move actually from the category of an idea to execution. And this game is a game of execution, right? Everybody wakes up with an idea. If we go to the room right now, everybody has a great idea. Everybody wakes up with an idea every time. The difference is the guy who takes a step. So the way you differentiate yourself in a scarce environment is that you got to take the first step. Because if you go to an investor and you say, I want to create this product, but I've done this, immediately even someone who's not an investor would like to help you. You know, back in my village, they're saying that the one that climbs a tree, you're pushed, you're helped up, right? So you always have to ask yourself, what effort can I make to execute the idea? Because it's an execution game. And the second thing that backs that up is that entrepreneurship is a team sport. You say, oh, okay, I have this great idea. I know how to create a product, but I don't know how to do this. That's why you need a coach. So you may not have the money, but find somebody who can do this other thing that you don't know how to do. And then together with that person, you make an effort. So you don't know how to write a code, But that guy you went to college with, did computer science, knows how to write a code. Go to him and say, hey, buddy, would you like to be a co-founder? Well, I know you have a day job, but can you do this at night? And then if this succeeds, you can come on board and I'll give you some shares. So he helps you at night to write the code. So the following day, you go to an investor, you don't only have the idea, you have some prototype. Immediately, you are ahead of the game.
Just to add to that, I would say that as an entrepreneur, as a Haitian, we need to define the goalposts differently than we do in the States. I think investment here is not $1 million. Investment is, $100,000. You know what I mean? Like, it's a different kind of conversation that we're going to have. It's not $100,000 or $1,000. So I think bringing all the goalposts and showing them what does success look like as a journey and not as a destination of, you'll have your own home, but what are the different road marks that look like success, and I think that's better for them.
We have a last thought. I want to make sure we're loyal to the schedule, but go for it.
So the only thing I was going to say is that it's as if we'd have to invest in giving them the resources as well, because right now, an average Haitian doesn't even have the opportunity to kind of like get that idea off the ground sometimes because they just don't know like what to do. They don't have the resources. They have that idea, but they need people to just kind of like talk it over with them. So it's as if there needs to be an investment in providing resources for free in a sense, and then having the other investment of, now I'm going to give you capital. At least give me some resources just to get started. Give me a push, because right now there's a lack of just basics, of just knowing how to Google. And that's something a lot of people have, but in certain places, there's a group of people that just don't have that simple thing.
So I'd just like to reiterate what the speaker said this morning. It's time for the Caribbean nations to align with each other and invest in small business. We can do it.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, audience. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, guest panelists as well. Based on that, as we exit, I have one ask of everybody. Because this is about partnership, because this is about providing support beyond just the money, I'd ask that every one of you who's attending, before you leave the resort, find one other person who either lives here if you're visiting or who's visiting if you live here, connect with them and see how you can support each other to educate or provide another support to help make these partnerships happen. Merci un peu.
That was great. You're an excellent moderator.